of God's mercy and grace. Oh, life as an atheist is so miserable. Nothing but empty, dank suffering. Why go on? Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm calling this video The Joy of Atheism. There are persistent myths in evangelical Christian circles that atheists are miserable and they live unhappy lives and their lives are empty of joy and blessings because they left God. And I think there is also a fear among some people who are losing their faith that God is going to punish them for leaving the faith, for turning their back on God, for walking away. And I would like to try and dispel some of those myths and fears today. And I want to talk about the good stuff that's been in my life since becoming an atheist. Couple of caveats to begin with. 3, actually. First of all, this is not a philosophical defense of atheism. That is not my purpose here. So don't post in the comments about how I'm wrong about being an atheist. This is talking about the experience of, not the reasons for. As I said, I want to dispel some of those myths. Second caveat, there are a lot of atheists that deal with a lot of suffering as they leave the faith. They are rejected by friends and family, ostracized from their community, losing their families entirely, possible divorces, losing their jobs. There's a lot of philosophical suffering that goes on, dealing with feelings of emptiness or loneliness or being unmoored from a foundation, or just really the uneasy feeling of feeling like something you believe to be real about the world has been turned on its head. This video is not to minimize any of that struggle that those people go through. This is talking about a different aspect of life, and I don't mean to demean or diminish those struggles because they are real, and maybe I'll make a video talking about some of those at some point too. Third caveat, and I know this is going to annoy some of you like crazy, but I am going to conflate atheism, naturalism, and skepticism in this video because they are all intimately connected for me in my experience. And it's hard to talk about one without including thoughts about the other. And like I said, this is not a critical philosophical approach about atheism, though that's for other videos. This is an experiential thing, and this is my experience. So that's what I'm going to talk about. The first thing I'd like to talk about are some of the freedoms that come with being an atheist and ways that those have enhanced my life. And the first of those is a freedom from fear. Now, there's a lot of fears that being in a religion, especially like a staunch evangelical religion, will bring with it. Fear of failure, fear of hell, the present fear of blasphemy, like accidentally blaspheming and losing your salvation, fear of disappointing God. There's a lot of anxiety and angst wrapped up in some of these fears, definitely, and of course the fear of hell. And living without that has felt so empowering and liberating and exciting. It's like a weight has been lifted off of me. I'm not afraid of accidentally saying the wrong thing at some point in time, that to blaspheme against God and lose my salvation or something crazy like that. And those are fears that are inherent and endemic to the religion. There are atheists that struggle for decades after they leave the faith with the actual fear of hell. They wake up having nightmares about it. And it's a tough thing to get past sometimes. But when you're out of that, it's just like you've sprouted wings. It's hard to explain. It's a joyful feeling. The world just seems like a much less scary place. And you recognize there's enough real things in the world to be afraid of. You don't have to be afraid of phantoms, myths, and monsters. Coupled with this freedom from fear, there's a lot of superstition that's baked into a lot of modern evangelical Christian. Fear of the number 666. Some of you are going to understand that like deeply. Like it's crazy, and there's all kinds of other fears like that, like, and they get entwined with the other fears, the other superstitions that we have in the world. And since the journey away from faith and the journey towards some form of naturalism were co-equal to me, my skepticism led to a degree of naturalism, and that led me to abandoning my faith. But swept away with all of that were all the regular superstitions that people believe in. Spilling salt, or black cats, or walking under a ladder, the number 13. All of these kinds of things are just gone. Ghost spirits, hauntings. People get completely creeped out by hauntings. And my immediate response, if something really weird happens, like an auditory weird thing, people go, oh my God, is that a ghost or something? And I'm like, no, it's just a weird sound. My brain doesn't know how to interpret it properly. The world just feels like a much safer, more beautiful place. And that has really been a joyous thing for me. Absolutely. Moving on, the next freedom I have found is a freedom from guilt. If it's one thing that certainly the monotheistic religions are fantastic at, it's guilt. If you think about it, the central conceit of Christianity is that you are guilty for Jesus dying and being brutally tortured. How awful is that? That and nobody can ever live up to the ridiculous standards that churches create for people. You are constantly failing, not because there's anything wrong with you, not because you've done anything wrong, but because they've created these artificial standards that are sometimes in direct conflict to normal human behaviors and desires. And everybody falls short of that. You know why everybody falls short? Because they're hopelessly impossible to meet. And you just live with this overwhelming sense of guilt for all the little tiny things that you've done wrong. And the tiniest little thing gets conflated to, that's it, because you did that, Jesus had to die. It's an awful burden to live with. And now, again, all of that is swept away. And when I do something wrong, when I wrong someone, I can actually do something about it. I can apologize. I can make amends. I can try and make things better. I can talk with them and work it out. And then I can be free from the guilt for having done something wrong. That, again, just like the fear, is such a massive burden to lose. Kind of in connection with that, one of the other great freedoms has been the freedom from guilt about sex and sexual desires and drives, and being able to explore your own sexuality and just understand yourself so much better. And I won't get into details, but I had the chance to do some of that. And you know what? It was fantastic. It was fantastic to be able to take those steps to explore that space, to explore my own internal feelings and not feel guilty about it. And that's what we should be able to do. Definitely. Absolutely. And the fourth thing, this isn't the third thing, it's the fourth thing. And this is kind of tied to the fear, and especially tied to the guilt, actually, is struggling with a sense of personal worth. The great hymn that even my wife likes to listen to, even though she's not even remotely religious, is Amazing Grace. And in that hymn, you're a wretch. And that is the message that the Bible pounds into us, that Christianity pounds into us. You are not worthy of this. You were born covered in filth and sin. And only God can fix it. I mean, it's crazy. And it definitely, you compound that with that constant sense of failure, of not being good enough, even though you're trying to be good enough. And it's vulgar and it's oppressive. I mean, Hitchens was brilliant with this. We're born sick and commanded to be well on pain of torture. It's pretty crazy. Not having to deal with that. I actually, that's not quite right. There is still some dealing with that. I have been going through a process of recovering my sense of self-worth. And no, religion wasn't the only factor in that. There are other factors in my life that compounded that in me. And it's going to be an ongoing struggle. But the fact that I have risen from the place of thinking that I was a worthless wretch to more than that, even though I have more to go, again, is joyful and liberating in spectacular ways. The next thing that I would like to talk about, in a lot of religious circles, very frequently what you do is you give God thanks for good things that happen to you. Like every single good thing that happens to you, every success, every positive thing, everything that luckily goes your way is a blessing from God. And one of the big fears, I think, is that if you leave the faith, you lose those blessings. Well, I have blessings in my life, and I earned them. I worked for them. Blessings don't get removed. I've had lucky things that have happened to me, things that have broken my way. It happens. It's part of life. Good things and bad things come your way. But the things I could point to for blessings are definitely things I have worked for. I'm in a much better position financially than I ever was when I was a Christian. This isn't just about giving away 10% because I didn't always tithe regularly because I was really poor. And no, this wasn't because I was a Christian. I'm not saying I was poor because I was a Christian. There were other factors, again, in my life that kept me financially suppressed. But after I left religion, that has steadily and steadily and steadily improved to the point where I'm comfortable in life now. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I'm not worried about missing a day or two from work and being just absolutely destroyed financially. Like $5 is not a major financial decision to me anymore. This isn't because I'm an atheist now. But the point I'm trying to make is I didn't lose blessings. I've been, in some ways, more blessed, to use that ridiculous religious phrase, since leaving religion than when I was in religion. I mean, when I was devoted, when I was going to church every day and praying every day and teaching Sunday school and worshiping and doing Bible studies and doing daily devotionals, where were the magical blessings then? And they're here now. And I earned them. They didn't just happen to me. I don't have to give the credit to someone else for things that I did, that I worked for. Another one is relational. I am on my third marriage. The first two were nightmares and disasters, and especially during the second one, I was actively going to church. And it was a disaster. And again, it's not because I was a Christian. I'm not trying to blame religion for that. But now I am in a relationship that is the kind of relationship I have always dreamed of having in my entire life. It's a wonderful relationship with a wonderful, really intelligent partner in life, and she's amazing. Where was that blessing then? Where was that blessing? And how is it that I have that now after I'm left? That's really the contrast that I'm trying to make here. Blessings don't stop just because you leave the faith. You don't have to be afraid of that. You can just open up and move into a new phase in your life. And it can be a really wonderful thing. It's not going to be dank, it's not going to be dark, and it's not going to be hopeless. It's going to be awesome. So, the last part I'd like to talk about is where to go from here. I was not super active in the church when I left the faith, but for many, many years, I was deeply active in church, going all the time, being super involved. I was an adult Sunday school teacher. I helped out at worship services. I helped change the sign. I did all kinds. I didn't do music because that would have been a sin. It still would be a sin if I were to do music, so I will never sing for you. But the point is, I was very active. And there's a lot of social interaction that comes along with that. You know, you do bake sales, you do potlucks. There's a lot of this social exchange. And for a lot of people, when they leave religion, they lose that social network. And that is really difficult because we are inherently social species and we need that kind of interaction. I can't advise everybody on everything they should do to fill that void, but I want to talk about what worked for me and maybe it will work for you. I found that social void getting filled through gatherings of other people with related interests to me. Now, in my case, primarily, that was gaming. Yes, some of you will know what this is. That became a huge part, an enormous part of my life. The social space that once was occupied by church was now occupied by my game community. And the very best friendships I have made through my life, I've made there. Sitting in a store on a Friday night or a bunch of other nights, playing cards with my friends and other games. And helping out at a convention. People I knew ran a convention. I got to volunteer at that, and that was great. That was very fulfilling. It was engaging. It was creative. It was fun. That, for me, filled that social space. That's not going to work for everybody. It might work for some, but there are groups like that. There are social gatherings like that for anything you could possibly be interested in. I also enjoy kayaking, and there's some Facebook kayak groups that I'm a part of, and I can guarantee that I could put in on almost any given morning heading out to the water who wants to join me, and I'd have 2 or 3 people there with me. Definitely could happen. They do charity work. If you like charitable causes, helping out your community, there's at least 2 that I know that local kayak organizations do. They help with people with mental disabilities, have time spending time in kayaks. They help assist with that. And also they do shore cleanups on a regular basis, and they do other charitable things. So if you're finding that outlet, that's one way that I found an outlet like that. Another thing I like to doing is, you notice behind me, and maybe some of you have noticed it changes every time, I enjoy scale modeling. And again, there's groups all over the place for that. There's people that meet regularly. COVID aside, granted, everybody's been shut down for the past year. But there are all kinds of groups. There are conventions to go to. There are little hangouts that people get together. Again, there's stores sometimes you can go into and hang out and talk with people. There are ways to find this socialization. And we have never, ever, COVID aside, lived in a better time for finding and making these kind of social connections than we do now. Everything is on the table. Do you like anime? There's groups for that. Do you like model rockets? There's groups for that. Do you like music? There's groups for that. Do you like literature? Do you like a very specific genre of literature? There's groups for that. Are you writing? Do you want to go to writers groups? I've done that. There's groups for that. There are social connections and groups you can make everywhere. Find something you really enjoy and that you're really passionate about. Find people that are also passionate about that thing. And you've just done church all over again without the mythology and the superstition and the guilt and the fear and the pain and some of the misery that can come along with that. And I'm not saying that every moment in church for me was miserable or painful or unhappy. That's just not true. I had a lot of joyful memories. I am not one of those people who was deeply injured by something that happened in church. I wasn't wounded. I wasn't emotionally ostracized or wounded. I ended up drifting away because of life concerns, pulled me away from things. But I don't have a vendetta. I don't have a grudge against anybody or anything in the church. But being on this side of it, it's a much different perspective. And I just wanted you to know that there is still joy to be had without God. And that's kind of what this video was all about. If you enjoyed it, thumbs up. If you don't, hey, thumbs down. It's all good. I'm not going to judge. You can find me on Twitter at 23rd Playable, 23RD Playable. I'll put the link that's a reference to this. Some of you will get that. And as always, be kind to one another and peace out.